So I guess I hadn't really intended to talk about Dragon Age Inquisition because I haven't played it and I don't really. I've only watched it streamed. I haven't actually had any firsthand experience with it other than watching other people play it. But I do think the one thing I would say about that game is the other bummer about it and the other main reason why I probably wouldn't pick it up aside from the Origin thing is the lack of multiplayer, like the lack of co-op, because I think that game would be amazing with co-op.
Yeah, I just again, it's the whole people against putting co-op in role-playing games, even though it would make them like 10 times better and probably more tolerable for people like us who like playing, just a lot of things where you can actually have a group of people playing and
Yeah.
not just like, the whole single player grind thing is just kind of a turn off.
Well, it's funny, right? Because like when I'm in the right mood for it, I can really enjoy and get into a single player experience. And I don't think there's anything wrong. I'm not saying like they should stop making single player games or that single player shouldn't be like a prominent thing in game design. Far from it, because sometimes I do just want to play a game by myself, and that's totally cool and fine. But the problem that I have with the lack of multiplayer, or specifically the lack of co-op in a game like Dragon Age, is the whole entire premise of that game is that you have a party of people. You're basically micromanaging and controlling all of the people in your party. So what's the harm in letting like your buddy play as one of those people? I mean, I get that like everybody wants to be the hero or whatever, but like for example, if you were playing that game, I would be totally fine with just like a party member and playing with you. Like I don't feel like I need to be the center of attention in a game to have fun playing it, or in particular have fun playing it with someone else.
Well, yeah. And I think it just inherently that's the whole thing with role-playing games is that most of them are predicated on like, you're the hero and you're going to save the world from, X, Y, or Z.
Hmm. Yeah,
But
I wish somebody would make an RPG, honestly, that's just about going on adventures. And it's just about, hey, form up with your group of friends and go do cool things. Um, oh man, I was too slow. That guy like joined and left before I could hit ready.
we got another one though.
Yes,
Hopefully
he
he
does.
readies.
Hopefully. Well, now that we're all ready, that should give him inspiration. He'll be like, oh, these guys are ready to go. Let's do this thing.
Yay!
All right. Oh, new ending. Crown of Command. Oh, that's weird. I thought I disabled this. I wonder if it reset my preferences. Oh well, I guess we're going old school. Well, I guess I'll be the Amazon.
And in this case, I will go knight.
See, and it's funny, right? Because like restarting here, we get a totally different dynamic, right? Because we got a new ending to deal with, and um, do new characters in play.
Oh, don't pick the thief.
If you pick the thief, we're just gonna have to murder you.
That's the rule.
Just
That's
letting
the
it be. Like I feel like there's three characters, right? It's the assassin, the thief, and the dwarf. Especially depending on the game ending that you're doing, because like I feel like all three of those characters could potentially like rush for the center under the right
yeah.
circumstances.
Yeah, they'll have the potential to run away with the game, I think more so than a lot of others. Especially the thief. God, I remember who was it?
OMG.
Oh.
Well, it kind of doesn't matter, but let's just say, for the heck of it, strength. Roll a 0. Uh, this could be bad. Well, I'm gonna try it again just because. Why not? Ugh. I was hoping I'd get a 6 and that I'd at least be able to tie him if he rolled a 1. Like I was clinging to that last little shred of hope, like the statistical little microbe of hope that I wouldn't lose a life there.
Yeah, the game was having none of that.
Yeah, it was hating. Hating. It's weird not having to do a warlock quest all of a sudden. Like my brain is still like, wait, do I have enough fate? Where's my gold? Oh, right, we're not playing that game anymore.
We don't have to worry about that creepy old guy who hands out quest cards from his stinky cave.
Well, at least until we need a talisman. You know what? This is going to be the first time playing the original ending for me since the Frostmarch expansion came out. Because ever since you've had the ability to exclude the original ending, that's what I've done.
Yeah, it's kind of, and it's weird too, because again, it's like with the, especially now since we're playing with the dungeon expansion, like
Hmm.
with old school rules,
Yeah. Well,
it's
it'd be
so
interesting
weird.
to see how this plays out. Because, like I say, it's been so long since I played with the original ending that it may be that it's actually more playable with all these other expansions turned on.
Good point.
I know in the base game, at times it would be a little bit frustrating, but um, because you get into those situations where you just get to the end of the game. Holy crap!
Man, this this game does not like you.
Well, actually, this baby isn't the worst thing ever.
Oh,
Yeah. What? 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 What?
the only reason why I had doubt is because that card can be a real bastard sometimes.
Oh yeah. I mean, I was scared. I was totally scared the whole time that was happening, but then, flipped the switch pretty quickly.
Oh,
I have to say I'm really encouraged to see so many people playing this game. Like the fact that we were actually able to get theoretically two separate games going like that quickly, I think is pretty cool.
I think yeah, I think the addition of the new content and how Steam um, starts to has started to kind of highlight those games that get like recently updated or like downloadable content will come out and they'll be like, hey, this game totally got like some more content, you should totally play it.
Hmm.
I
I
think
think
that's cool.
also they finally reached that point, that incident in the previous game aside, where the game is a lot more stable and less prone to error than it initially was. And I think that's probably helping too. Like people are probably getting less frustrated trying to play multiplayer than they had been before they made all those changes and updates.
Yeah, because I mean I even remember we were just getting frustrated with that too when it kept constantly doing that.
I am a risk taker. Will the risk pay off?
uh,
4 was good enough last time, but not this time.
oh
Can I get a do-over? It really loves giving me a 4. Oh, and it really loves giving him a 6. Oh, oh, the horrible, horrible, brutal, icky pain. Ah, man. It's going to be one of those games, isn't it?
didn't want you to win that. I'll take them.
Oh no, we've got a heckler in the chat.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah. Fortunately, I know who that is, so I can safely ignore him.
Oh, I can only imagine who it is.
You may be surprised. So, yeah, getting back to the Dragon Age thing, because I wanted to wrap that up. Um, I wish I could get it excited about the game. I wish it had the features in it that I wanted it to have. It goes back to that whole thing like with Skyrim and stuff. It's like I would be so into playing a new Elder Scrolls game that had co-op in it, that I could play with at least one other person, so I'm not just roaming the countryside by myself, like talking to trees and stuff.
Hey, Tree, what's going on, man? Yeah,
I
that's
know I'm
interesting.
really stupid for doing this, but it seems like a good idea at the time.
Oh.
Ooh. Oh,
Ah.
burn.
Oh, you get a redo, don't you?
Yeah, I do. That's the Amazonian power. She can beguile an enemy. Okay, now, here's the thing. I could re-roll this on Fate, but the way my luck's been going, I'm not holding out a lot of hope. But at this point, YOLO. Oh my goodness. I'm getting rolled pretty hard here. Okay, so now here's the point where I start having to be careful, right? Because
Oh.
oh, I just got took. I forgot about that thing's ability, right? Like it crushes anything that it defeats. So there was no hope there. Well, you know what? I was not off to a good start anyway with that character, so maybe my luck will change with a new character. And given that it's only like the third turn of the game, that's not a terrible time to have that happen.
Yeah, an early death is not a hindrance.
Yeah, I mean, I've totally come back and won this game more than once after dying, even later than that. So I'm not too worried about that. And actually, that may be one of the quickest deaths I've ever had. So I'm feeling like I didn't really lose too much there at all.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of how many cards have come out already.
I swear that was only like the third or fourth turn of the game because I think I lost lives on the first couple of turns. Oh, this is interesting. See, I could go totally old school and pick the warrior because that was actually the very first character. Oh, no, the game just crapped out. Somebody chose to leave. Okay. Oh,
But
but
yeah,
it
I got
it booted me all the way back to the title screen.
ah
Did it tell you that somebody chose to leave?
yeah,
Is that what you
Phantom.
got? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's unfortunate. Okay, let me see if I can resume this real quick. See if we get at least our third person back in here. Okay, yeah, we got. Okay, I got you guys back. So I guess we can just continue with the AI, right?
Yeah, just the one. Yeah,
Yeah,
because Slav is back in, and
yeah. So we'll just
yeah.
we'll just play it out with the AI. So that's actually how it's supposed to work. It's supposed to recover like that if something does go wrong. And I think that only glitched out there because that other guy left.
Yeah, I just didn't understand why he didn't re-roll.
Yeah, it was weird. That whole situation was weird. Okay, let's go Gypsy. I kind of like trying to stick to the newer characters when I can.
The gladiator is evil.
Hmm. Okay, so that's a terrible square for me to go to. Let's visit the Mystic and hope we roll a 5. Yep, it's gonna be one of those days. So let's see, while you're playing out your turn there, I'm gonna review my character. Oh, that's right. Her inherent ability is to choose whether or not she's affected by events. That's nice. I can also pick up spells when they go to the discard pile. And whenever I discard a spell, it goes to the bottom of the pile.
Oh, that's a crazy ability.
Hmm.
Being able to pick up spells that have just been used.
Man, I am not getting a lot of good choices here. Especially now that I've been made evil. Ooh, well that's alright. I'll take that. Millhouse. Okay, so I think we've got the game going here. We've played through a couple of turns. We've had our minor technical hiccups and such, so we can probably, fingers crossed, start safely talking about some other stuff. What do you think?
I concur.
All right, so as I was mentioning before all of the madness started, um, I've been playing Valkyria Chronicles, which is it's kind of a difficult game to classify, but it's basically like a hybrid action strategy RPG, which originally appeared on the PlayStation 3 back in, I think it was 2007 or 2008. It was actually like in the time before achievements even existed on PlayStation or trophies. So that tells you how old that game is. But they recently released it, they being Sega, on PC on Steam for 20 bucks. And that's one of those games that I've always had kind of a love-hate relationship with because it really harkens to a lot of the things that I love and hold near and dear in gaming. Like some of my favorite all-time games are those sort of turn-based tactical strategy games where you're basically controlling like a small group of soldiers in a kind of battle scenario. You know, things like XCOM and Fire Emblem and Jagged Alliance and games like that. And in a lot of ways, Valkyria Chronicles is a game sort of like that. But the big thing that's different about it, the thing that kind of got in my hair a little bit the first time I tried to play that game, is the fact that there's a real time element to it. So as you're kind of moving around the battlefield and doing stuff in the game, things can happen in real time, like in addition to what you're trying to do, like strategically and tactically, you have to react to things happening instantaneously as you move your characters around. And that can be somewhat frustrating, depending on the circumstances.
Yeah, I mean, how does that aspect work?
So basically, as you do each turn in the game, you have like a strategy map, like a tactical kind of overview map that has like little markers on it that represent all your units. And basically, you select a unit that you want to move, you know, for their action point, or you have basically these command points that you get per turn, and each unit that you move uses up one of those command points, and when you select them, you can then literally run around the battlefield in real time and aim and shoot at things or take cover or repair stuff or do a whole variety of actions based on what class of character that you're playing. And then you do that until you basically run out of meter, or you run out of things that you can do per turn. And so like you have this big tactical overview that then sweeps down into like a third person perspective on your actual character as you're moving them around. And so, it's a little bit of a weird disconnect in some ways because it it evokes a lot of the things that you're accustomed to in action games while simultaneously evoking a lot of things that you're accustomed to from strategy games, but it doesn't always hold true to either genre. So there's all sorts of exceptions that happen, both in terms of what you would expect from an action game and in terms of what you would expect from a strategy game. And I feel like that was a big part of what initially made me struggle with the game and maybe get a little turned off to it when I first played it. But I feel like looking back on it now and approaching it kind of with a more clean perspective and not any sort of, expectation or bias towards it, I really feel like it's a much better game than I initially gave it credit for. Um, and I guess I always kind of suspected that there was something more to that game because I always kind of felt like it was a game I should come back to and try again at some point. But really being able to separate myself from my expectations of what I thought the game was or what I thought it should be, and actually look at it in terms of what it actually is and what it does really well. There's a lot of really good stuff happening in that game. Like from a gameplay standpoint, from a narrative standpoint, just from a engagement and like taking your expectations and kind of throwing wrenches into them at strategic moments that kind of really give you pause and make you think, hey, wait a minute, this game's doing something really different than what I'm used to. And I feel like it's a pretty risky thing that they did in a lot of ways, and it kind of demands a lot of the player to play the game and accept it for what it is, because otherwise you're just going to be really super annoyed by it. you know so to be able to look past your expectations and actually just appreciate the game for what it is, I think is a pretty tall order to ask of like the average gamer.
Oh, geez. I mean, I think just to build any sort of audience anymore, from just like a brand new IP is probably one of the hardest things to do in the industry anymore. Um, so, and especially again, like you said, once you're introducing new mechanics like that as well, it could also turn people off. Um, for a game to be like, well, hey, this is the way that again, this is the way that I function, and you have to, kind of again, throw your expectations out for me. I don't think a lot of people, especially gamers these days, I don't think a lot of people would like that.
Yeah,
But
well, I mean, you hear people talk all the time about how the gaming industry as a whole has become so risk averse, right? Like that nobody wants to do anything that's not a sure thing anymore. And it really made me realize going back and playing Valkyria Chronicles how that really was in a lot of ways one of the last games that I played that really did have a genuinely original concept, like mechanically and gameplay wise. Like, and it's sad to think that that game is like 7, 8 years old now, and there hasn't really been an RPG or a strategy game that's come out since then that's done anything close to what that game did, in terms of, bringing new and original mechanics out there. Like whether you agree or disagree with what the game did, it still did something. It still tried something different and stood like behind whatever it was trying to present to you. in a way that I think is sadly lacking from a lot of modern games. You know, there's not a lot of risks being taken. There's not a lot of attempts to do anything but the status quo in the industry, especially in the past couple of years. And I almost feel like that's kind of what drew me back to that game in a weird kind of subconscious way. It was like I saw it come up on the new release list on Steam, and I'm like, wait a minute, like this game's really different. This game's really kind of something special, even though it kind of pissed me off at the time. I was still able to recognize, this is probably something that's worth revisiting. Now, having said all that, I did just complete that game today after putting about a little over 60 hours on the PC version of it. And man, there's some really frustrating things in that game. You know, it's not a cakewalk. It's not easy. It doesn't really uh, it doesn't really give you the option in a lot of cases to win and progress without trial and error, I guess is the way that I would term it. There's a lot of things in Valkyria Chronicles that when you first play a mission, you're going to find um, that. Hmm, sorry, needed to assess that. um, you're going to find that there are certain things that the game's gonna throw at you that you're just completely unprepared to deal with, and as a result, you may end up failing a mission, or something may end up going like horribly wrong. And the only real way to succeed in the game is just to try to play a mission through, see what it's going to throw at you, then figure out a strategy to deal with it, so that when you replay that mission, having failed it the first time, you'll actually have a chance at it because you'll have then had what you needed revealed to you, through gameplay. And again, that's another like way in which the game is very risky in terms of how it approaches things. Like most games, especially modern games, they give you so much. They lead you on so much and tell you so much about how you're supposed to play the game and how you're supposed to succeed at it, that the way that game kind of throws you to the wolves repeatedly throughout the campaign is kind of insane.
Which definitely sounds like it could possibly be incredibly frustrating at some outlets.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Like I have this weird appreciation for the game now that I kind of maybe always had on some subconscious level, but I really get it now in a way that I didn't when I first played it. In that it is a perfect example of a game that's just trying really hard to do something different than what other games do, and not just for the sake of doing something different. It really has this agenda where it's trying to advance this idea of, no, here's this new way of approaching this game mechanic and this thing that is so traditional and so like rooted in all these other games that came before it, and let's really take that and turn it on its head and make it a new thing. And the thing that's crazy about it is that game really does succeed in a lot of that, but it does it in such a cavalier, like, get on board or get lost kind of manner, that it's kind of amazing that that game ever got greenlit and like came to market the way that it is. Like you would have thought that at some point like a focus group or like a marketing team or something would have gotten a hold of that game and its development and said, no, 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 this is way too hardcore. You're asking way too much of the player to like, embrace all these new mechanics and accept, this trial and error gameplay. And it's like the game is almost like, in a way, it makes me realize now why Dark Souls was so successful, because like in a way it's kind of like the turn-based version of Dark Souls, right? Where it's like it's almost like punishingly brutally difficult to figure out what you're trying to do. But then once you understand the mechanics of the game and once you kind of wrap your head around it, stuff almost becomes easy in a weird kind of way. but it's like getting to that point is it's just crazy. It's hard to articulate, precisely what the thing is about Valkyria Chronicles that makes it such a unique and interesting game. But I think if I had to try to sum it up, what it really boils down to is that it's just unlike anything else you've ever played, like kind of top to bottom. There's no game that you can sit and point at and say Valkyria Chronicles is like blah blah blah, but this one little mechanic is different or this one little wrinkle is different. Like it really is a game that's so different from any other game that it kind of stands alone in its own like sort of subgenre.
Huh. That sounds pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, I mean the thing is like it's very frustrating when you get to the parts in the game where it's meant to be frustrating. I almost feel like that was their design motif, right? Like where they just said, "Okay, here's the part where we bend the player over repeatedly and just destroy their will to exist." But then once they figure out how to deal with this situation, they're going to feel totally awesome. And it's like making that assumption that the player is actually going to be willing to go through that and figure out what they have to do. And I feel like that's something that games used to do all the time, right? Back in the day, like a game would be purposely obtuse about its mechanics or about what you were supposed to do, and part of the challenge of the game was figuring out how to even approach a given situation. And I feel like that's something that's kind of been lost for the most part from gaming because like again like I say there's so much hand holding and tutorializing and press X to be awesome and all this stuff that we have now in games that it's kind of refreshing and it's kind of nice to play a game like that, and it kind of reminds you of the fact that there is such a thing as a good suck, right? There's something being hard and being like kind of challenging and kind of like kicking your teeth in. You feel like you've actually accomplished something when you finally do overcome that.
Yeah, and honestly, the only thing that I would say about that is, if they ever decide to make a sequel to it, I hope that they can kind of continue and you've used a good example too with Dark Souls. It's like, because Dark Souls, that's the thing, it prides itself on being, very trial and error, very, you have to kind of figure it out before, you know, or really understand what the game is and how, the game has to be played in order to get, you know, adept at it. And again, I hope that whenever if a sequel were ever to come out from that franchise, that it would kind of stick to its guns and not like dumb itself down in order to try and reach a wider audience.
So here's the interesting thing about that game. There actually have been, that I know of, at least one sequel to it. And I think there may have even been two. But the interesting thing about that is they only ever appeared on the PSP.
Oh, what?
Yeah. But, there is a precedent for games that first appeared on the PSP getting like an HD treatment, and getting released, on other platforms. And I'm kind of hoping that maybe that Steam version of Valkyria Chronicles will sell well enough and get enough attention that they may at least bring those PSP games over to PC as well. Because I've never played them, but like now having completed the first one, I kind of would like to.
Yeah, just to see again what direction they took.
Hmm.
Again, and I would hope that they would stick to their guns. Um, that's just me.
So this is a real contradiction here, these two items. I'm gonna get one of them.
If you were neutral, you might have been able to pick up both, I think.
Yeah, the sad thing is, I think I actually did start off neutral, but then I got whammied by the Mystic.
Yeah, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. So yeah, so I would say like all things considered, I would say I give Valkyria Chronicles a thumbs up now having actually finished it. Um, there's definitely some brutal stuff in that game where you'll be like, man, this is just insane. But it's that good, it's that it's that punishing in a good way or punishing in a way where it makes you feel like you've actually accomplished something once you unravel its mysteries. Uh, and I guess like that's part of the other thing about that game is in a lot of ways it almost feels like a weird kind of puzzle game where like a lot of the encounters feel less about like employing traditional tactics and more about figuring out how you're supposed to use the various abilities of your characters in the correct sequence or in the correct manner to achieve the result that you're trying to achieve. And but it's weird because it's not always like that. Sometimes it is just purely tactical and strategic, and it's a weird kind of combination of the two, and they kind of juxtapose and swing back and forth, so that like sometimes you have to go with the gimmick or go with the gamey kind of part of the game, and sometimes you have to rely on like your pure tactical or strategic prowess. And that's that's like yet another thing about the game that's kind of unique in kind of an interesting and simultaneously weird way. But I know I know I'm talking about this game in a very like ambiguous sort of way, but I think that has to do with the nature of the game, honestly. Um, that just it just is the kind of game that it is.
Few games could actually do that, so it's understandable when when there's so much going on and or there's so much to it that it's like it's hard to explain. Here's how it kind of works.
Hmm.
I mean, honestly, I would say the same thing about, I think that the same kind of ambiguity could be leveled at like Talisman because it's like not I don't it's hard to say, whether or not everybody's going to like this game cuz
Oh
you know,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. I mean, this game is not for everyone, for sure. I mean, there's a lot of weird, uh, eccentric qualities to this game that I think the things that simultaneously endear it to people who do like it are gonna, alienate other people.
Yeah. I can't afford anything.
Can't do it.
I
That
might
is
as well
not
save
the
it for the
truth.
mercenary anyways.
There you go. So let's see. What else have I been playing? I have been playing a new game, which some people may be interested in, which is The Crew.
Ooh.
The funny thing about that game is I've actually played quite a bit of it before it even was released, because I was actually in both the closed and the open beta for the PC version of it. And so I got to play probably as much of the game as I've played since its release before it was released. And I can say that while there are some things that are different about the game from what I remember from the beta, a lot of it is either identical or very similar to how it was in the beta, just more polished and more refined and just snazzier than perhaps what you saw in the beta. And that's all to the better, I think, for the most part. there's a lot of really cool stuff going on in that game too, but I think it's a little bit easier to kind of describe and talk about than uh, say Valkyria Chronicles.
Well, yeah,
You can't
yeah.
have my gold.
No one wants to go on that square.
But so the crew is basically this open world uh, MMO style driving slash racing game, and the game that it immediately reminds me of. See, this is how it's not like Valkyria Chronicles, right? Because I can immediately just compare it to another game. Is the Test Drive Unlimited series, um, where you basically had these big open worlds that you could drive around in and do all this crazy stuff, like activities and story missions and little side things you could do. Uh, you have all of that same kind of stuff in the crew, and I actually wouldn't be at all surprised to find that some of the people who worked on the Test Drive Unlimited series ended up working on the crew because there are literally things in that game that are identical to concepts and things from the Test Drive Unlimited series. Like in Test Drive Unlimited, there was this whole idea of being able to drive around the map and you would get these like little sonar pings, basically these little radar pings that would lead you to wrecked cars. And if you would find the wrecked car, you would get a part that you could eventually use to build a special car if you got all of the parts from it. That that thing is exactly in the crew. Like they literally didn't even change any aspect of what I just described. It's literally exactly the same as it was in Test Drive Unlimited.
Nice.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a bunch of other stuff too, like how when you're driving around in the game world, like you can at any point hit a button and it zooms you out to like the map of the world, and then whenever you're done, looking at the map or setting a waypoint or whatever, it just immediately uh, goes to uh, the back down and swoops down to the car view again.
That's kind of slick.
Yeah, it's very slick the way that they do it. The presentation in that game is definitely one of the better attributes of it. Oh, lame. Lame. I don't like having my thing stolen. Although at least he fought me for it and didn't just take it from me.
He's still a thief.
Yes, still a thief.
Damn thief.
I don't. Oh man, I am. No. This is bad. Very bad. It's not easy being evil. Oh,
Maybe it is.
yay, stuff. Hmm. Well, the way things are going, definitely no reason not to do that. And actually, that's a perfect trade in because that was exactly 7. So definitely no reason not to do that. So the crew is pretty cool. I have to say that right off the bat because I'm going to talk about some things that kind of annoy me about the game. But overall, I think I'm pretty pleased with it, and I'm pretty psyched to be playing it. I'm actually looking forward to playing more of it, which is always a good sign. Um, but there are a couple of things that I found a little bit annoying about it. The first of which, and this is just going to be a launch day, launch week kind of thing with any online focused game, is at least on launch day yesterday, they were mad, just insane server issues with just like servers going down randomly. Like, and the thing is, the way the game handles a server going down is not particularly graceful. Like, if the server goes down and you're in the middle of a race or an event or something, you just get disconnected like mid-event, which is kind of a bummer.
Ugh.
Like, I feel like there's a probably a more graceful way that they could have handled that. Um, but the other thing, like assuming that the online stuff will get sorted out as it always does in games like that. The other thing that I found a bit annoying is the way the sort of story progression in that game works. They kind of throw you into a situation where they've kind of led you to believe all along throughout the gameplay up until a certain point that you're just on a golden path basically. That you're just supposed to be going from event to event and sort of mission to mission, just progressing naturally through the game. And at a certain point, you get to a mission where if you haven't kind of deviated from the path and explored a little bit and gotten some new parts and stuff for your car, it's really difficult to complete the task that they give you. And I found that to be a little bit frustrating because one of the things about that game is they have a tendency to just dump information on you, like to a large extent, where you're just constantly being presented with all this data and statistics about your gameplay and hip tips and hints and all sorts of things. But like when it really came down to it, it really mattered, and when the game really could have saved me a lot of grief by just giving me a little direction, it totally was silent about that and just kind of let me bang my head against an event that I really had no business trying to do until I had upgraded my car a little bit more.
Oh. Ugh.
But once I got past that point and then kind of realized, oh, that's just something the game doesn't tell you. Um, I kind of feel like that kind of opened the game up for me and made me feel better about it and less frustrated by it. It's kind of one of those things where it's like if you're going to present so much information to the player and kind of lull them into that state where you're they're basically relying on you to convey everything that's important about the game to them, as soon as you leave something out, that's a lot more jarring than if you hadn't given me all of that information to begin with, right? So it's kind of like they took a risk in their game design, right? They said, okay, we're gonna make this perfect crafted experience where the player is just strung along and told exactly what to do moment to moment, and then all of a sudden like the rug gets pulled out from under that unexpectedly, and so that absence of that tip or that absence of that bit of information is that much more significant than it otherwise would have been.
Yeah. Well, I think, I mean, in some way, then they should try and, at some point, encourage you to kind of go out and, um, like you said, explore and get better parts for your car so you can actually do, like, some of the more difficult missions.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not like those options aren't there, but it's a situation where right, you pull up the map and there's a glowing, pulsing thing, right? They're like, oh, here's the glowing, pulsing thing. That's the next thing that I'm supposed to be doing, right? And they basically trained you to do that with the first like half dozen or so missions in the game, where it's like, oh, I did this event. Okay, now I go drive here and do this other thing. Okay, now I go drive here and do this other thing. And then you do that 5 or 6 times, and then all of a sudden you get to one, and it's like, whoa, this is way harder and way crazier than anything up to this point. Like, what's the deal? Like I was following the breadcrumbs. I was doing what you told me to, game developer. But like I said, once I kind of broke away from that mindset and kind of started exploring the game more like on my own and kind of got off the golden path, I started having a lot more fun with the game because the other thing that's crazy good about that game, The Crew, is how vibrant and dynamic and awesome the recreation of the U.S. that they did for that game is. Because like obviously, it's not to scale or anything like that. Like you're not going to be driving for hours, to get from one part of the world to another. And to me, that's actually a really good thing. Um, but what they've basically done is made like a greatest hits, of like American highways and cities and driving roads and stuff like that. So like everywhere you go just feels like this really cool place to explore and do stuff. And they do have a good way of kind of populating the game environment with like random activities. Like you'll be driving along the road and there'll be like a gate that you drive through and that'll trigger like a slalom course like that just appears as like holograms on the road and you kind of just like slalom through that, or like there'll be like gates you have to crash through, or there'll be a jump you have to take and reach a certain distance, and that's all just happening like as you're dynamically driving around the world, right? Like you don't have to go to a specific. I mean, they are at specific locations, but they're kind of in places where you would naturally be going anyway. So it's not like you have to seek them out. They're just kind of there, like laid out for you to experience. Or you can just, if you don't want to, trigger the gate, you just drive around it and ignore it. But the other thing that's cool about them, which is another really smart thing that they did, is whenever you're playing one of those challenges, if you want to retry it, whether you failed it or succeeded at it, or you want to try to go for a higher, rank in it or whatever, you just hit the X button and it automatically puts you back to the beginning of the challenge and you can start it over again. So if like you're driving down the road and you hit one of those gates and you do like a slalom challenge and you miss like the last turn or whatever, you go on the wrong side of the last pole, you can immediately hit the X button and just go right back to the beginning and run the event again without having to drive back to, the point to start it over.
Yeah, yeah.
The other thing that I like about those challenges, which is really cool, is how um, whenever you get the same part, because basically you get parts for your car by completing those challenges, so there'll be like a bronze level part, a silver level part, a gold level part, and even within the same uh, class of reward, sometimes you'll get different trait boosts for your car, right? Like you might get one part at the bronze level that gives you better acceleration, but you might get that same part again that gives you better top speed. So it takes the same slot in the car, but it's tuned, for acceleration or top speed, even though it's at the same, level. But the other thing you can do is if you keep doing a challenge over and over again and you keep getting the same part, it'll tell you, hey, you already have this part. Do you want to just convert it to money, like on the spot? So you just hit the A button, when that prompt comes up, and it'll just automatically turn the part into money, so you don't have to bother like managing inventory and selling it later and stuff like that. And I think that's like the main thing I wanted to mention about it is that the game does a really good job of automating things so that and giving you these little prompts so that like right in the flow of normal gameplay you can just hit a button and have something cool happen, or like take care of like something that would normally be a chore that you would have to do and like go to an inventory screen or something like that, you can just do right in the game as you're playing. And I think that's a really cool thing that they've done that I haven't really seen in a lot of other games, especially like racing and driving games. Like the way that they've streamlined all that is really neat.
It sounds like that way just makes it more seamless.
Yeah, it's totally one of those things where when you see it, you think, well, duh, right? Like, like of course this is how it should be. Like all games should be like this, derp. But yet, I struggle to think of an example of a game that is like that. So I kind of have to give them props for, you know, if not coming up with that, at least like implementing it in such a nice, clean, kind of clever way. It kind of makes me wonder, though, if the reasoning behind that wasn't just because they realized at a certain point that they were presenting so much information to the player in all these diagnostic screens and leaderboards and all this stuff being thrown at you constantly, that they had to simplify the interface, because if they had a complicated interface on top of all that information, it would just be like reading a spreadsheet.
Yeah, and you don't want that.
Yeah. I think they strike the right balance, though. Like I feel like all of the data that you want is pretty easy to see, like even amidst all the other data that's maybe a little superfluous. Um, and then on top of that, like those little conveniences in the interface, I think go a long way to streamlining the experience. So it always just feels like you're going, going, going. Like it doesn't feel like you're wasting a lot of time in that game backtracking, or like going to places you don't want to go or doing things you don't want to do. It feels like the game is just tuned in such a way, for the most part, where it's just like, hey, do whatever you want to do, and the game will kind of accommodate you. Um, with the one exception, like I mentioned before, of it kind of like leading you down a bad path with the storyline stuff. And I'll tell you the mission that I'm talking about, so if anyone plays the game, you'll know if you get to this point what I'm talking about. It's basically the second mission you get when you go to St. Louis, which is the second city you go to. You basically have to go and race against a bunch of the locals to take their turf, and that race is just insanely difficult compared to everything you've done up to that point, unless you've upgraded your car.
Which would definitely be a must, I think, at that point.
Yeah, and it's totally one of those things where if they just would have said, "Hey, before you go do this, you probably want to upgrade your car." That's all I really needed. If they just said a gentle nudge, saying, "Hey, I know we've just been having you go bang, bang, bang through this stuff, but like, you probably want to go visit like the tuner guy and get some parts for your car before you do this event." That's all. That's all it really would have taken. But it's funny how like a game can frustrate you like that, right? Like where you can be like having a good time, enjoying yourself, cruising through the content, like really like appreciating and enjoying the experience, and then you hit something like that and it can become like almost maddeningly frustrating. Like it actually kind of reminds me, segue, of the single player campaign in Call of Duty Advanced Warfare, which I also finished recently.
Ah, I
Have
see
you
what you
played
did
any of
there.
that?
No.
Do you have any desire to play any of that?
Uh,
Troy Baker's the voice of your dude.
yeah. I've been tempted, but I'm just afraid that it might be a waste of time. Like, cause I've played so many other previous
Hmm.
what is it? Call of Duty campaigns now, and I've been disappointed with so many of those that that's why I've kind of just been, uh, I guess,
Hesitant.
d- yeah, to get into any like single player campaigns anymore because I just find most of them boring.
Hmm. Well, I would definitely not use boring as a word to describe what I experienced playing that campaign. I would say that there are certain aspects of it frustrated by, or that I thought were maybe not as good or as cool as I thought they could have or should have been. But overall, I definitely found the experience pretty entertaining and pretty worthwhile. Um, and in particular, as somebody who does really enjoy the multiplayer in that game, um, I also feel like that campaign does a good job of giving you a different appreciation for a lot of the mechanics that you end up seeing in multiplayer. Because there were certain things that you get to do with the exosuit and such that I think make that game way make a lot more sense, I guess. Whenever I was doing multiplayer kit configurations, I would always think like, why on earth would you ever put this ability on your loadout? Why would that ever make sense? But playing the single player, it kind of made me realize, oh, this is what they intended you to use that for. But like, for some reason, the context of that never occurred to me strictly when looking at the game in a multiplayer setting. So I don't know. It didn't really change my mind about doing loadouts. Like I still kind of feel like I have my way of doing multiplayer custom classes and stuff, and I'm probably going to stick with that. But it was interesting to see some of those abilities in the single player context and understand why they make sense and why they belong in the game because of that.
Yeah.
So the other thing I will say about that campaign is it has one of the most frustrating missions that I've ever played in any game ever in terms of just being completely like at my wits end trying to get through it and deal with it. It was one of those ones where I think it took me like several attempts, maybe like 20 or 30 attempts to get through it over the span of like 2 or 3 days before I finally did beat it. And it was totally one of those things where I knew mechanically what I needed to do after about the first day of trying to do it, but it was just being able to execute on it, just getting to that point of, reaching enough proficiency to be able to do it, uh, that it took to get through it, which was a bit frustrating. But it was kind of one of those cases where by that point I was so invested in what was happening and I wanted to see it through that I just sucked it up and made it happen. But I definitely was cussing at my screen quite a bit at that point.
I could imagine. I mean, I remember. I definitely remember.
So do you remember the Mile High Club in Modern Warfare, the original Modern Warfare, I think it was?
Yeah.
The one where you're going from like the back to the front of the airplane and there's like an achievement for doing it on like hard mode or whatever.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Trying to finish that mission on veteran
Yeah.
in a set time. It's
Yeah.
so funny too, because I remember trying for a full day straight trying to do that. I never was able to,
Mhm.
and and then having my soul crushed by going on YouTube and watching somebody complete the entire thing with nothing but goddamn flashbangs.
Yeah.
I'm like, I feel like such an asshole. Like, I can't. Like, he made me just look like such a noob. So I'm like, I've been sitting here trying to do this for like 6 hours, and then this dude just comes out with flashbangs and completes the whole thing on the first try.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, because it's just about getting from point A to point B. Yeah.
yeah, you don't actually have to kill anybody, which he
Mhm.
demonstrated by
Right.
flashing the entire crew.
Yeah.
I'm like,
I actually
ah,
saw there's a really funny video. Brad Shoemaker from Giant Bomb. They have this series that they do sometimes called Breaking Brad, and one of the things is him doing that straight, like him, actually doing it where you shoot everybody. And I think it's like 5 or 6 hours long before he finally gets it. But like the uh, the elation, the like palpable elation when he finally gets that sequence down is like amazing.
oh yeah. I feel like that's some of the best content that I've ever watched is like when somebody's trying to overcome something like that.
Yeah, because it feels like a training montage, right? Because you see the failure, like the repeated failure over and over again. That's how I felt when I was streaming the crew yesterday, right? Because I was streaming when I got to that mission, that was giving me such a hard time, and I think that was part of the problem too. Was a little bit of my pride kicked in, and I'm like, I can get this. I can beat this race. This isn't this hard, right? Like I've played a million racing games. I've beaten a million, events in racing games, and I don't know what the final count was, how many times I finally had to do it before I got it, but I had to do some crazy Jedi stuff. Like I was cutting every corner, like just like driving incredibly recklessly, like right on the ragged edge to get to the to get to the point where I could actually pass these other cars because the problem was my car was underpowered, right? Like it should have been, a few notches up from where it was. So I was having to do these insane moves to get around these guys, and it was just this this frustrating like perfect storm of angst, right? Where I'm like, I know I can get this because it would like let me get so close to getting it and then like thwart me at the last second. And the other thing about that game is the traffic patterns are randomized. So every time you retry an event like that, you can't count on the traffic being in the same place. So you completely have to react to whatever is presented to you. Like there is no pattern to memorize or anything like that. It's just a straight up like slugfest, like you versus the game basically.
Damn.
But yeah, the I was a little disappointed in how my stream turned out watching it back. It was dropping a lot of frames and stuff, and I think that might actually have something to do with the way that game is interfacing with OBS. But it kind of made me want to um, like re-record some footage of that game and show it off properly because it's a shame when you see it and you don't get to experience it at like the full 60 frames a second and all that because it is a really amazing looking game. Like especially when you consider the scope and the scale of it, like the fact that you can drive like literally from one end of the country to another in that game and it's completely seamless is really impressive. And like just like the almost fetishistic level of detail in some of those environments is just crazy. Like it's one of those games where you just want to pull over sometimes and just stop and look at what they've done with the world design because it's so intricate in spots. You're like, wow, like it's an insane amount of work that they put into something that you're like most people are just going to drive by at 120 miles an hour and not pay attention to.
Yeah, I remember when games used to be like that too, where you'd be able to just like kind of get lost in a game world.
Definitely. And that's one of the things I always loved about those Test Drive Unlimited games was like the biggest like hook of the game was just driving around the environment and finding everything, right? Like finding all the shortcuts and all the dirt roads and all like the little like secret places that they put in and like hid stuff in, all the little Easter eggs and all that. And the crew definitely has that. Like it feels fun to just drive around and screw around in that game. And the thing about that game that's awesome is it's built from the ground up to be co-op. Like everything you do in that game, you can do cooperatively, which is really neat.
Nice.
So I know you said before we started that you haven't really been playing anything new. Um, but I know there is a game that's coming out very soon that we're both pretty interested in that we probably will be playing that we could talk about.
Which would be.
Dungeon Defenders 2.
Ooh, yes,
Yeah, so
very
that
much so.
I believe that is supposed to come out on Friday, which is
Jeez.
pretty amazing. I like Dungeon Defenders. I know a lot of people like hate on that game, but I think it's awesome.
Oh, I can't get enough of that game. I still play it by myself, which is why I'm excited for this next one, so I can actually play with you guys again, because that's something that people would probably want to mac on.
Yeah, I feel like you kind of missed the boat in terms of playing with us in that first Dungeon Defenders game because a bunch of us kind of devoured that kind of before you really played with us.
Yeah, because I joined the group in like 2012, so
Hmm.
that I was definitely late on that. But now, yeah, with all the new additives, with this next game, it looks pretty sweet.
Yeah, I know Joystick's been streaming some footage of it, some gameplay of it. I actually have been meaning to go back and watch their VODs to check it out because they only when they stream stuff they only stream for like a half hour to an hour at a time, but it's usually stuff you want to see, because they get being a media outlet, they get like early access to a bunch of stuff, and I know they've done at least one or two streams recently for that game, so I'm kind of curious to check it out before Friday. Was that you just making a note to go look at Joystick's VODs?
Yeah.
Nice. Well, I always have to give Joystick props and shout outs because they were the only like major media outlet to give me any attention or pay me any mind when I released my first game. So mad props to Joystick. Represent.
Represent, represent. Yeah, I'm
So
feeling it.
this game is playing out rather interestingly.
Really? How do you how do you figure?
Well, I don't know. Nobody's died yet.
That's true.
Everybody's kind of doing their thing. I mean, you're kind of running away with the strength there, but I don't think the other human player has given up hope yet.
Yeah, no, no, he's hanging in there. I'm tempted because I never have. I've never gone through the dungeon, so I think with 14 strength, I'd like to just go through and see if I can actually beat the Lord.
Yeah, dude, why not? I'm sure people would like to see that. I mean, I have not done the dungeon very much since that episode that I did by myself where I just concentrated on it specifically. So I'm sure there's much more of the dungeon that people would like to see. It's one of the only times you'll ever gain life for being evil. But yeah, I regarding the Dungeon Defenders game, like I'm curious to see how their business model is going to work for that because I keep hearing rumblings that it's going to be free to play, and that seems simultaneously interesting and a little bit scary because I really hope that it's not a case if it is free to play where like all the best gameplay is gated or whatever.
Yeah, I know. That's why I've been kind of gun shy myself, where it's like, like, and maybe it's because they released the game for mobile, didn't they?
Well, the
With that.
original the original Dungeon Defenders started as an iPad game.
Oh wow, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, yeah, totally. It actually came out on iOS first, and then got ported to the PC afterwards.
It's so weird that they're going with the whole free to play thing.
Well,
I mean, it kind of.
I feel like in a lot of ways it makes sense from a business perspective, right? Because they have the name now, right? Like people know what Dungeon Defenders is, and they know like from the first game, like generally what the level of quality they can expect is. So I kind of feel like maybe they're looking at it as well. We don't need to sell the game up front to people. Like people are going to be willing to just give it a shot because it's a Dungeon Defenders game.
Yeah.
But like, and I guess I'm just weird in this way because I really feel like I'm the sort of person who just wants to buy a game and be done with it. Like I've never really been a fan of the whole free to play model of the whole like nickel and diming, the player the way that most free to play games do. I'd rather just pay the one time price and just play as much of the game as I want to play. But I realize like I'm probably in the minority in that regard.
Well, I mean, because again, a game too, like his Dungeon Defenders is so predicated on the gear and things that you pick up. Like that's
Hmm.
why I'm kind of afraid at the prospect of like, oh, I'm gonna have to.
Yeah, because it's like you can't win either way, right? Because it's like if you can buy gear, if you can just buy a piece of gear with real world money, then that's just pay to win, basically. That's like definition of it. Or if they go like the Dota route, Dota slash Counter Strike route, and like have you buy keys to unlock chests, then you're basically gambling.
Yeah, I mean, didn't because I was gonna say, I mean, doesn't the new Assassin's Creed do something like that too?
Oh,
Where you,
honestly, I'm not aware. I'm not sure. I'm actually like 2 games behind on Assassin's Creed because I still haven't played Black Flag. I'm
uh,
still like halfway through 3, so I'm pretty out of the loop on what's going on with that series. I mean, I love it. I love like you know I played like the first 4 games basically, uh, or at least let's see, I played 1, 2, Brotherhood all the way through, and then I played about halfway, maybe 60% of the way through Revelations and got kind of burnt out on it and decided to skip the rest of that and go straight to 3. Um, but I loved, what I've played of 3 so far. I just haven't finished it. So I can't play those games as quickly as they release them. So I feel like that's a series I'm always going to be a little bit behind on. Which is why I think I mentioned this recently. It might have even been on our last episode of this that like I feel like I'm at the point with that series where I would be totally content for them to just release one every other year or every third year. Like I really don't feel like that's a series that needs to come out every year, much less like multiple games per year like they're doing now.
yeah, the whole annualizing, man. I think it's kind of taken it out of me, for playing the rest of that series because I played the first one and I really liked it, but I don't know why. Like when I saw the second one coming out, and then when I saw all these other ones coming out, I'm like, do I really want that gameplay again? And I guess for me, it didn't grab me as much. Like I thought the first one was a good game, but I never really saw myself going back and playing any of those previous or any of those future titles because again, it just didn't really grab me um,
I think
that way.
uh, I think my favorite of the series so far is probably the second one. Um, Mostly because I feel like they got the right combination of like the dynamics of the game and giving you like more things to do without it being overwhelming. And also I really liked what they were doing with the story in the second game. And it's actually one of the few times where I've genuinely been affected by like a game narrative and actually like really felt invested and like truly like into it. And I still say for me anyway, that second Assassin's Creed game has one of the best endings to any video game ever. Like, and it would be such a shame to have that spoiled for a person who've never played it before. But like, if you ever had any desire to play that game, you really should play it before that ending gets ruined for you because it's amazing.
Yeah, fortunately, I've not had it ruined yet. So
And
luckily,
then Brotherhood, which was the technically the third game they put out, I also thought was excellent. The only thing I didn't like about that game was there was one of those scenarios, kind of like I was describing earlier with Call of Duty, right, where there was just like this one mission they threw in at the end of the game that you had to do to progress that I thought was just really cheesy and hard and kind of almost ruined the game for me. But like everything, like the 40 hours like up until that point were amazing. It just that I got to a point in that game where it kind of left a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth because the something like really annoying happened right at the end of the game. But like other than that, I think Brotherhood is great. Revelations, not so much. I feel like Revelations was kind of the point of diminishing returns for me, where like they kind of tried to drag another game out of the Ezio storyline, and it just really felt like a little bit, I don't know, just like it felt like the B team was working on that game or something, and I think that actually may have been the case where they like literally had a different studio working on it. Like there were some cool things in Revelations, but it was definitely that was where I felt like the series was kind of losing its way. And then, like I said, I've enjoyed what I've played of three so far, but I'm not even halfway through it yet. So I just need to find the time to get through it. And then I hear four is amazing. Like everybody seems to like four.
So amazing.
Amazing.
I'm also interested in seeing the new models in action though for Dungeon Defenders too.
Oh yeah, yeah. Those look like the. Oh, I just like what they're doing with the art style in that game in general. I think it's a cool evolution of like kind of taking it more away from the cartoony look, but still kind of whimsical. I think is a good direction for them.
Yeah, yeah.
I feel like the weird thing about Dungeon Defenders also for me is that's totally one of those games where like they don't really need to change too much. They just need to give me new levels. They need to just give me more to do because I really enjoyed like all of the DLCs and stuff for that first game. I thought were pretty good, at least the ones that involved, adding levels to it and such. Um, but yeah, I'm hoping that that game ends up being really good. Like I want it to be really good.
Well, yeah. I hope the free to play thing isn't as intrusive or whatever
Yeah.
with
I hope it
as
doesn't
it
get in the way
sounds.
of the experience. That's
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Like like and I also hope that there's some kind of option where you can just like pay a flat rate or whatever, or flat fee and just get everything. Like it would be cool if they just had like a master key or something like that you could buy where it's just like the price of a normal game and it just gives you everything instead of having to worry about, oh, do I buy this or that or this other thing or the thing that I'm worried about too is like if you end up playing with other people, like does everybody have to have all of the right content to be able to play together and stuff like that? Like I feel like the way Talisman does it is really great, right? Where it's like if only one person has the dungeon expansion, you're all good, to play together. And I'm hoping that like, if they do have a mechanic like that, that they will, um, embrace that sort of mindset.
yeah, yeah.
Because I definitely don't want to be in a situation where it's like, hey, let's play Dungeon Defenders 2, and I've got some level that nobody else has, so we can't play on that level, or something like that. That would suck. Uh-oh. Don't hurt me.
He's trying to
Oh.
put the hands on you.
Oh no. Oh no, I just got roughed up. I just got roughed up. Man, everybody wants my damn sword. I guess I can't blame him though. I mean, he's probably trying to make a run on you. I'm just like I might as well be an AI at this point.
Yeah.
I'm just like meat for the soup. Oh,
Just so he has to find some other way to get inside.
nice. Being very aggressive. I like it. It is a lot different. I think I've mentioned this before, but it is a lot different playing this game to stream it in this context of like talking about other games and stuff while we're playing it. Like I know there's no way that I'm paying as much attention to what I'm doing here as I probably should be or would be if all I was doing was thinking about playing this game.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that, because I've been talking a lot in this episode, I'm noticing how well you're doing because you're not saying much. I know this is all part of your cunning plan to destroy me. You're like, I didn't play anything. I'm gonna play this game though. I'm gonna beat your ass. I
Yeah, go to
kid,
sleep.
I kid.
I just cast sleep on that guy. He's so mad.
I'm actually surprised that the thief is rolling in there.
He's kind of stupid.
Yeah, I mean he's really got no business being in there with the
Yeah.
stats that he has. He's gonna end up like a smear on the floor of that place. I keep ending up in this weird cycle where I keep ending up on the same squares over and over again. Like I'm having trouble getting to like, you know, untapped territory.
That's
Ugh.
why it took me so long to get a talisman, is because like I was traveling back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
And while I was farming the temples, I was like trying to desperately get to the warlock cave so I can actually do something.
Mm-hmm. Well, the funny thing is, if you beat the guy at the end of the dungeon badly enough, like if you beat him decisively enough, you don't even need a talisman because you can go straight to the crown and bypass the fire valley.
Oh, really?
Because the square you end up on after you fight that guy is determined by how many points you beat him by. So if you have like strength 20 and you roll a 6, you'll have such a high discrepancy between your attack value and his that not only will you beat him and get the reward, but you'll go straight to the crown. I think you have to beat him by like 8 points to go to the crown. 8 points or more. It says it on the square, but I mean that's how that mechanic works. Because when you finish the dungeon, that's how you exit the dungeon. However many points you beat him by is um, where you end up. And then if you lose, you also end up somewhere bad.
Yeah, yeah.
In addition to losing your life.
Well, I got a roll to go and kill the pit lord, so I just killed him and went to the middle.
Hmm.
Because that's the problem. It's like if the dungeon wasn't so friggin' dangerous, I might consider it.
Yeah, I really feel like the dungeon's purpose is, say you're in that mid game period, like you're in that like my stats are between like 6 and 10, and you're just trying to get more stats, and you want to stay away from the other players. I feel like that's where the dungeon is really useful, but that's a pretty specific circumstance you have to be in, to make that work.
Yeah. And there goes the thief.
And I definitely enjoy the dungeon a lot. Like I think it's a really cool board section, and it has a lot of really cool cards in it. But like I also do feel like it's selectively useful. Like I don't feel like just because the dungeon is there and enabled, like it's a place I necessarily need to go to.
Yeah. Huh.
Just trying to put the whammy on you.
Holy
Nice recovery.
shit. That was good.
I mean, that's how you play the game, right? You try to thwart the other guy.
Yeah.
It's like when you nuked that talisman.
He's pondering his next move.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just thinking about something. Just trying to think if there's anything that I can actually do here. I think it's pretty much over, but hit you with the misdirection.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's definitely putting up a fight. Feisty. He's actually not that far off craft-wise, but the thing is, you'll just destroy him with the whole strength thing. Because I don't believe the Exorcist can force psychic combat even when he's attacking.
Well, I think he can.
Yeah, really? Let me look at the card.
If he's attacking, he can use it.
Yep, yep, you are correct. Yeah, actually, if he can make a run at the craft path, he might actually be able to give you a little trouble, which is I'm sure why he's trying to delay you as much as he can. He's probably trying to get in there. Get a talisman.
Oh my god. He just did a really stupid thing.
Yeah, that was really dumb.
Wow.
He'll be kicking himself over that one for sure.
He should have. I don't know why. Maybe he figured out it might attack him if he or when he got in, but still, all he
Mm-hmm.
would have to do is go to the mines, and
Yeah,
he would have escaped me.
yeah, that's gonna be tough for him to get unstuck.
Unless he gets lucky here.
Well, the thing is, right, if he rolls a 5, right, isn't that what it takes to get him unstuck?
I thought. He doesn't have a talisman though.
Maybe he's thinking he can take yours,
Well, it's weird though because he just had the option to go over to
the warlock.
yeah, and he didn't take it.
He's gonna nerf you.
Yeah,
Unsurprising. That was a lucky, really lucky draw on his part to get that rod right then.
I'm glad it's just not that crucial.
Yeah, I mean you have such a strength lead over what you need at this point. I'm just here at the academy reading my books.
Yeah, remember, dude, you don't have a talisman.
The thing is, because this is the original ending, he does have time, like theoretically.
Yeah, he does. Oh,
Wow. Man,
I
he is not having a lot of luck.
yeah, he's I think he might re-roll. No, that's so weird. Cause I mean he did some really smart things to slow me down,
Hmm.
but now I'm just kind of confused.
Well, I mean, he didn't do that on purpose, right? Like he just got screwed by the little devil guy or whatever.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Had to silence my device there. Was going off.
I thought I heard something in the back.
Yeah, yeah. You know, there's so many things now that generate noises that it's hard to remember to turn everything off whenever you're recording something.
Yeah. Page for Mr. Doodle.
Well, at least it's only a two. Didn't roll a six. So that was bad.
Oh. Yeah, I would like a redo on that. Of course. He friggin'. Uh, he,
Nice.
he draws a talisman.
I'm half tempted to just go give him my axe. Just to make this more interesting. I kid, I kid.
You're gonna ask him a question.
Just go drop it on the ground next to him.
So vexing for the cultist. You know, you could get on the inside if you take that pillar.
Yeah, but what am I gonna do? You
That's
know what I
true.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
like I could go in there, but I'm just gonna get stomped. I have an axe, or no, I actually don't have an. Or did I keep my axe? I don't even remember. Oh, that's funny. Oh crap.
You should have taken the inside.
Yeah. No, that's quite alright. I'm happy existing where I am out here. Oh, this is a possibility. Nice.
Yeah. Come and get it, Slav.
Come get some.
Wybro slave. Well, you borked it, Slav.
Yeah, that's taking a bit of a disturbing turn.
That was a little play on Borderlands 2.
Yeah.
Because in one of the missions, if you fail it, Brick just goes, "You borked it, Slab." And so when he did that, I was just like, "You borked it, Slav."
Nice. I only played through that game once, and I guess I never failed that mission because I totally did not catch that reference. Although I did pick up during the Steam sale the pre-sequel when it was on like 33% off because that was actually the price that I felt like it was worth as opposed to $60 they tried to sell it to me for a couple months ago.
Did they have any kind of 4 pack or just?
No.
Ugh, God, I hate when they do that.
Yeah.
Especially that game. Like,
Well, the first one had it, and I think even the second one did, but for whatever reason they decided not to go that route. I'm gonna go with they like money.
show me they like money for 10.
It is funny though, because I bet a lot of people bought that game for $40 because that's the price that it seems like that game should have been to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, my whole thing with that is I would pay $60 for it, but I would only pay $60 for it if it came with the game and the season pass.
Yeah. Yeah, the
But
idea that you're gonna have to double dip, or that they're trying to double dip there with like the whole 60 plus 30 thing on a game that's like, not even done by the same team that did the original two. I don't know. It's like they're asking a lot of the fans of that series, it seems to me. But I will play it here shortly and let you know.
well, no, I might actually have to buy it because you have it.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna actually play it anytime soon, so you might just want to wait for the holiday sale. It'll probably go on sale again. It's kind of weird how there's like the Thanksgiving sale and then the Christmas sale is always like a month afterwards. It's like the double whammy Steam sale action. It's kind of been that way for a few years now, though.
Yeah, our father, Gaben, who dawns us with
Bestows
Steam
upon ye
sales.
tidings of great joy.
33%, 60% off. Oh my.
There were quite a few good deals during this most recent Steam sale. I know I picked a few things up. I got, in addition to Borderlands, Thief. That new Thief game was like 750 or something like that at one point. So I grabbed that,
Wow.
thinking I'll probably play that eventually. And then, ironically enough, I just watched the Lego movie, and I've never actually played any of those Lego games. So I saw the Lego movie game was like $5, so I picked it up to give it a try.
The I remember years ago there was a Lego Star Wars game, and I remember liking what I saw from that and from what I played.
I feel
Those
like
are
the
actually,
Oh, I'm sorry, but I think we were gonna say the same thing. Is I feel like the general consensus on those Lego games is that they're awesome, but like once you've played one, you've kind of played them all.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and the only thing I was gonna say was like I'm kind of surprised at actually how fun those can be
Hmm.
to just sit around and kind of mess with that stuff. It was the same thing with like me and it was the same thing for like me and Minecraft because I was like everybody else and I'm like, oh well, Minecraft is so stupid or whatever until I actually played it one day and I'm like, you know what? I can't say that it was that I hated it. I'm
I
like, cause
didn't
it's
hate it.
yeah.
Box quotes.
I'm like, it's kind of fun if you're playing and building with other people. Because me and my little brother would like split screen and play and build stuff.
Oh,
So
you were playing it on 360.
yeah,
Yeah, I actually heard the 360 version of that was pretty good, especially after they patched it and stuff. I just can't look at that game without wanting to gouge my eyes out because it's just too. It's like I get like the some people find the pixelated thing charming, but I just find it really lazy and like annoying.
Well, I mean, no, I would definitely agree with that. I'd like to see some sort of graphical update with that game. Again, not it doesn't need to be smooth or whatever, but it like it could still be block based or whatever. But
Yeah, I
I don't
just feel
know.
like if the blocks were like a third or a quarter of the size that they are, that would be fine. Like it's just they're just it's just that little bit too chunky where it just looks like awful when you get up close to anything.
Yeah.
I know there are a lot of people who would say that's a very like um, shallow kind of perspective to have on that game, but whatever. S I guess I'm shallow in that regard, but I feel like it's amazing to me how many things that game does right, and how many things are cool about that game, but that like the those visuals just hurt my soul.
I mean, everybody's got a preference. It's like the same thing with our friend Eric. Who hates or he doesn't really like Borderlands. So me and him share like the opposite sentiment on Tales from the Borderlands, the new Telltale game.
Hmm.
And how I was like, you know, I'm like, I never played any of those Telltale games because I wasn't ever really interested in the subject matter. But I'm like, I would actually consider playing or buying Tales from the Borderlands because I actually like the lore of that place and where our friend Eric, he just doesn't. He's like, ew, he's just
Right.
like, I've had enough of that game. He's like, if I don't
Hmm.
see that game for another 2 years, I'll be happy.
Hmm.
So it's just about preference.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think it's funny, right? Because the Telltale's casting a pretty wide net with their releases lately, where it's like the Borderlands game, they've done the Back to the Future games, Jurassic Park. Now they've done Game of Thrones. It's like they're like shooting, they're kind of scattershot with all their licenses and stuff that they're doing for all these adventure games, right? Like Walking Dead, of course. They're trying to touch every base. It kind of feels like in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like I mean it takes real talent to be able to snatch up those licenses like they have and really do this source material service like a lot of people are have been um, very impressed by. Um, and honestly, again, that's something that I respect them for because I think a lot of people didn't look at adventure games as something, that could be done anymore. I mean, especially in like 2007 through 2009 when there was just a rush of like first person games and, all these AAA titles that were like mostly, again, like third person and first person oriented, and that's like what they were was like a third person shooter or first person shooter. And so I think for them to really find that market for people who want that, who missed that old style of like adventure games or like very story rich experiences, I think is definitely kind of uh what would you call it, insightful on their part to see a need for those types of games again.
Well, and the funny thing is, a lot of people would say they haven't really done anything differently. I mean, they've just been making those games all along. It's just that they finally found source material that was compelling to a broader audience, right? Because I mean, they've been making Sam and Max games forever, and they made the Strong Bad game, Strong Bad's cool game for attractive people. Like they've been making games for a long time in that style. It's just that I think they are finally getting to the point where they're picking the right intellectual property matchups, to get people who normally wouldn't be interested in playing games interested because they're interested in those movies and books and TV shows and such.
Yeah, and I mean, even even their original ideas, like The Wolf Among Us, has garnered attention and praise.
Although The Wolf Among Us totally based on a comic.
Uh,
Yeah,
Interesting though.
yeah. I have not read said comic. I just happen to know that from a press release or doing a little research on the game. But yeah, I think the guy who does that comic, or the, I assume it's a guy, but the author of that comic actually consults on those games in a similar fashion to how Kirkland does on the Walking Dead games. But I actually played the first episode of the season one of Walking Dead, and definitely found it to be quite compelling. It was just one of those cases where it came at a time when I was playing a lot of other games, and by the time the second episode was released, I was already distracted with something else and just never came back around and came back to it. But I definitely thought that that first episode in particular was quite good. But I do need to actually have the rest of season one and season two of that game to play at some point whenever I get around to it. It's definitely on my pile of shame, my ever growing thank you Steam sale pile of shame.
Yeah, yeah. My big brother, because that's all he's really been doing, kind of on playing his Xbox. My big brother, he played through the Walking Dead games, I think, and he really enjoyed what he's played from that.
Nice.
It's so funny, like how he's been moving slowly and slowly just away from gaming. And as he's been moving away from gaming, he's been playing things that he never thought that he would be. Like when he first, Skyrim was his first role-playing game, which is why he loves that game to death. Um, which is kind of the way I love Fallout 3 so much. I think is because that was my first experience with a really good RPG, or
Hmm.
just an RPG period that was done, I guess, in the style that kind of introduces you to what a role-playing game is and simplifies it just enough to kind of introduce people who otherwise wouldn't be playing it.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about it recently, and I was thinking about because it's no secret I've made no bones about the fact that I was really disappointed in Skyrim, and I was trying to think about what it was that really disappointed me, and the thing I always come back to with that game is the lack of co-op, um, and you can't really fault that series that much for that because it's never really had that feature in all its iterations. But I tried to think about it beyond that issue recently, and it occurred to me that I think there's a fatigue that kind of tends to set in whenever you play a bunch of games, like whenever you just play a lot of games as a general rule. And I think that, you know, Skyrim for me just happened to hit at that time where it's like, I had played Morrowind, I had played Oblivion, I had played a bunch of other epic, Fallout 3, a bunch of other epic RPGs done in a very similar style. And for me, I think Skyrim just kind of hit at that point where it's like I had hit that point of saturation where it's like, okay, I don't really want any more of this particular experience anymore. I want something new. And for me, like that game, in addition to the lack of ability to play it with anyone else, it just didn't offer enough new for me